All right, this section, as your book calls it, is the search for spices. I think that's somewhat of a misnomer. Spices are important to the Europeans, and the addition of spices to their diet drives a lot of the urge to begin to explore the world, but far more than that, it's about leveling the playing field for the Europeans.
And I'll explain that here in a couple of slides. Okay. The book mentions this. They bother to put it in blue, so I'll throw it out there and reiterate it. The Moluccas is a tiny little cluster of islands
in what is today Indonesia. A major source of
a variety of spices, though there were also spices that come from India, from all over Africa.
The Europeans are interested in more than just spices.
They want Indian gems, they want cotton, they want silk. I mean, think if you lived your whole life in rough spun wool next to your bare little hiney and you experienced silk, wouldn't you be pretty interested in acquiring some more of that? Okay.
So, how had Europe gotten what it got before the Europeans begin to sail? This red line here is primarily what is known as the Silk Road. It is an overland route, okay? And the overland route is treacherous. It is physically dangerous. It is emotionally very wearing. Let's imagine that we start off with something from China. We get
some tea from China.
Okay. We have to cross the inland Gobi
Desert. Very stark, nasty desert. Then we go across a whole bunch of Mongol territory, into the Persian Empire, into the Safavid Empire,
where Iraq is today, and then on into the Ottoman Empire, where we then have to board a ship to sail to Venice. Okay? The price of items on the shelves for you today when you go to Walmart includes not just what it costs to make it and some profit for the manufacturer, but Walmart has added on to that price what it costs them to get it from the manufacturer to their warehouse, to store it, to truck it to the store, to put it on the shelf, to pay for the lights to light the building and the electricity to run the cash register. Okay? There are added on costs. Are you with me so far? Okay. So let's say that we are a Christian merchant. We are a Christian merchant in China, and we buy
a wagon load full of goods.
And we make it across the Gobi Desert, and we're headed through the Mongol territory, and some barbarians, some raiders, stop us. Well, they could kill us and take everything we've got, or they could hold us up. Which do you suppose they'll do? They're probably going to hold us up, because if they kill us and take what we've got, what good is it to them, right? They'd have to take it on to Venice, and that's not what they're all about. So they're going to hold us up. So out goes some money from our pockets. We continue on west. Now, you sometimes had to pass through cities and towns. Especially in mountainous regions, you try not to go along the tops of the mountains. That's not easy going. Where do you go? Through the valleys. Sometimes you can't go around them, Joe. You go through the valleys. So let's say there's a city nestled in the bottom of this valley, and the only road, trail, path, track through it, through the valley, goes through the city. So we have to pay a toll at the city gate, and then we're in, and there's an inn for us to stay in overnight, oh good heavens, a bed to sleep in. The prices are way high. Why would they be way high? Because the only people passing through town are merchants on the Silk Road, and they know that those merchants have money. Okay. Guess what happens when we arrive at the gate on the other side of town to leave the next day? We have to pay to get out of town. Okay. More bandits, more bandits, more bandits. And we get to Constantinople, and now we have to hire a merchant vessel to load our goods onto to take us to Venice. And the captain's going to want some profit for himself too, isn't he? Okay. So the goods that we finally land ashore in Venice, we have to charge a lot more for them than what we paid back in China, don't we? A lot. Now, does all of that profit go into our pockets? No, we have to set it aside because we know we're going to have to lay that kind of money out on the way back to China and back home again. So the premise is always throughout this class that money equals power. Right? Money always equals power. So are we, the European merchants, much more powerful? Did we make a ton of money? No. Who makes money every time a merchant crosses the Silk Road? The Mongols, and the Persians, and the Safavids, and the Ottomans. And from here to here, those folks are all Muslim. And we are European Christians. And so by continuing our overland trade with the East, we are giving money to the Muslims. By the transitive property of history sayings, we, by continuing the overland trade with China, are giving power to our enemies. Now do you see a huge incentive for figuring out how to get there not overland? Right? Okay. Prince Henry the Navigator, part of the Portuguese royal family. Interesting thing about Prince Henry, he founds this whole school of navigation in Portugal. He sailed, but he never landed anywhere but Portugal. He advocates exploring the world, mapping the world, but he stays at home. I just love those little ironies of history. Okay? 3 easy reasons for European exploration. I'm going to give you the easy to remember reasons, and then I'm going to give you the explanation behind them. Okay? Because the easy reasons won't get you much credit on the quiz. Right? Right. All right, 3 G's. God, glory, and gold. God, glory, and gold. God is a really easy one, right? The Europeans are setting out to spread Christianity. Spread Christianity. Glory. If I'm the guy who finds a way to get there without going overland and enriching our enemies, who's going to be famous? Woo woo. Bigger than Justin Bieber, baby. Gold. If I figure out how to get there and bring the goods back, and I sell them for just a little less than they've been costing, oh yeah, cash money, right? I can make it rain. Huge incentives, God, glory, and gold. Be able to explain the breakdowns of those. And the results of Henry's work, okay? What did we get out of Henry's school that allows exploration to take place? We will get the Azores, yes. But I'm talking about in terms of technology. Good luck today, my runners. You don't go until the next bus, right?
No, I go this bus.
Go ahead. Okay. Henry introduces the use of the magnetic compass to the Europeans. This drawing looks a little odd because it's from China, and it predates Henry's introduction of the magnetic compass to Europe by a lot. The Chinese had figured out the magnetic compass a long time ago. What is the advantage of the magnetic compass to navigation? Well, when you're sailing, you can lock on a point in the distance and think you're sailing directly at it. But because the wind is the wind and the ocean has currents, a lot of times when you think you're sailing in a straight line, you're not. It's kind of like if I took you all down to the gym and I said, lock on a point on the far side on the wall. And I put a blindfold on you. I'm not going to spin you around or anything. I just put a blindfold on you and I say, walk and touch that point on the wall. You would miss it. You would miss it. So the magnetic compass helps us make better maps because we actually can track where we've gone. Okay? Better navigation. Here's a better map. This is actually a map used by Columbus. More accurate maps. Maps that have some inclusion of ocean currents and prevailing winds. Maps where distances are slightly more accurate. A lot of times scale was still really off because they didn't know how actually big the Earth was. Does that make sense? If you don't have an idea of the entire size of the Earth, it's hard to draw a map to scale. The caravel. The caravel is huge. Huge, 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 huge. There are 3 things about the caravel that make it particularly important. See the triangular sails here? Those triangular sails can be directed in such a way that you can sail almost directly into the wind. Before that, you had only vessels with rectangular sails. And they can only sail with the wind or a little bit obliquely off of that line. A triangular sailed vessel can sail almost into the wind. Greater maneuverability. If you have a sailing vessel that can go where you want to go, that's huge. It beats the Roman and the Greek rowing vessels where you can't go very far in one of those vessels because your power source eats up a whole lot of food and you got to carry that with you. Okay, to feed those slaves on the Roman vessel. A lot of cargo. Next thing, large cargo hold in a caravel. Large cargo hold. What's the advantage of a large cargo hold? You can trade more. There's actually 2 advantages to a large cargo hold. You can trade more. Once I get where I'm going, I have a whole lot of space to bring it back. It's like buying a car with a large trunk, or when you go on vacation, only packing your suitcase half full, so you have more room for souvenirs to come home, right? Large cargo hold equals more money, right? More profit, more gold. Here's the other thing. Large cargo hold equals more provisions on the way out. If you're going camping and you're packing a 6-pack cooler, how long are you packing for? You're not going to go camping for very long if you're only taking that much food, right? But if you pack one of those, I can hold ice for 40 days, 80-pound coolers, you can go camping for a while. This is your cargo hold. The bigger my cargo hold, the more provisions for my crew I can load in. So the further I can sail out, the longer I can explore before I have to turn around and come back, or before I have to put ashore and re-provision. That's pretty significant. More time to seek that glory. The last one is a little difficult to see. Do you see kind of this line on the bottom of the ship where the paint color changes? That line mirrors where the water line on the ship would be. These caravels have what's called a shallow draft. A shallow draft. And draft is the distance between the water line and the keel of the ship, or the bottom of the ship. Old ships, before the caravel, had very deep drafts. Caravels as you can see here, have a very shallow draft. Why is that important for exploration? One, yes, you can travel a whole lot faster. That's a whole lot less surface area in contact with the water slowing you down. Why else is a shallow draft important? Further up a river, closer into shore. Yes, sir?
Since like the water level is like more likely of not getting into the boat.
No. Waves are still waves. Question?
I was just gonna say maybe like kind of following his is like hitting stuff like in the ocean, less like prepared.
Yeah, you're less likely to run into sandbars, coral, rocks, that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Imagine this. Imagine that this is the coastline of Africa, all craggy and stuff. If you have a boat with a deep draft, you have to anchor way offshore. Lower your lighter or tender, as your little ship that you carry with you is called. Get the crew to climb over who are going to row that. And then they have to row ashore or into the bay or up the mouth of the river so that you can map it accurately so that you can see if there's a reason to put a landing party ashore. If there's not, then they got to turn around, row back out to your ship. Get the crew back aboard the ship. Hoist the tender up. Then you have to haul anchor, set your sails, and sail on down the coast. Whereas if you have a ship with a shallow draft, you can do all that from the ship. Huge time saver. The less time we spend stopping the boat, getting off the boat, rowing, re-rowing, etc., the more time we can actually be exploring and pursuing our gold and our glory. Yes? I did take attendance. Thank you for checking. Okay. Fourth and final yes, Noah.
I was just gonna ask Prince Henry, what was his school?
It is just referred to as Prince Henry School of Navigation. It's not, but not Prince Henry School of Navigation as in like Capital School of Hairstyling. It's not a formal school. Okay. The astrolabe. This one is huge. Comes to us from the Muslims, and it is a device used to determine latitude. Latitude. What is latitude? Oh, you guys should have had this in like 5th grade. Geography. Latitude. Latitude are the lines that go around the Earth. The equator is the 0 line of latitude, so latitude measures how far north or south of the equator you are. We had star charts, but then to be able to tell based on this time of day where you are relative to those stars, you need the astrolabe. So you can then sight the star, you read the astrolabe, more accurate maps, more accurate navigation. Okay? So there's our 4 technological innovations brought together by Henry. You need to know the 3 things about the caravel. Moving on, let's put this stuff to use. Bartolomeo Diaz, or as your book calls him, Bartholomew. Sounds so much better, Bartolomeo. Eh? Bartolomeo Diaz in 1488. Not a date you have to memorize, but I give it to you so you know he comes before who? Christopher Columbus. Okay. He comes before. What does Diaz do? Well, he sails for Portugal. And he's going to sail south along the western coast of Africa. He's going to give us the Azores, and he's going to explore that western coast. And he will sail clear to the southern tip of Africa, which he will sail passed, but just a little bit. His crew got a little rowdy. They were not real happy. They'd been gone an awfully long time from home, and they not so politely suggested to El Capitan that he might want to turn the vessel around and go home, or he might not live to see the next day. Possible mutiny. So he names the southern tip the Cape of Good Hope because he had good hope of a successful completion to their journey. He proves that there is a bottom to that landmass, that it doesn't just go on forever. That's pretty significant. Christopher Columbus, oh my, dear Chris. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That is a date you need to know. From now until the earth is covered with snow. From now until the first semester final. Just, come on, Corinne, cut me some slack here. Wow. All right. Most of my students don't know that Columbus didn't just sail to the New World once, but 4 times. Because he brought God, he carried missionaries with him. He got a little bit of the glory. I mean, after all, where's our capital? Our capital is located in the District of Columbia. Okay? That isn't by accident, guys. The capital of Ohio is Columbus. The capital of South Carolina is Columbia. There's a whole day in November celebrating the guy, right? He got some glory, just not as much in his lifetime as he'd wanted. But what he didn't end up with was very much gold. Okay, he was very poor. Very poor. Okay. Christopher Columbus does, in fact, reach the New World first among European explorers who sailed to the Caribbean. We have pretty good understanding that the Vikings, in the form of a dude named Leif Erikson, actually reached North America before Columbus got there. There is some speculation that perhaps in 1493 the Chinese reached the west coast of North America. We don't have good factual documentation on that the way we do on Columbus. Columbus will take a number of things home with him on the first return trip to Europe. He doesn't find the mountains of gold and silver that he had promised Ferdinand and Isabella, but he does find slaves. He enslaves some Indians and takes them back, mostly as souvenirs, if you will. Human souvenirs, but souvenirs nonetheless. He will take new plants and some new animals back home with him. And lest you think he was a poor guest, he does bring some housewarming things to the New World with him, like smallpox and measles. But lest you think that the Native Americans got the short side of this, Columbus and his men also returned to Europe with venereal diseases. So the Indians shared that with the Europeans. Let's see, what do they teach you guys? STDs. Okay, for those of you who have health. Yes. Okay. Yay. Now, how many of you were taught at some point along the way that Christopher Columbus, when he went to speak to Ferdinand and Isabella, had to convince them that the earth was not flat? How many of you have heard that at some point in your education? Yeah. False. You have been sadly misinformed. Anybody who was relatively well educated by 1492 or 1491 or 1490 when he's beginning his campaign for funding, they know the earth is not flat. They know this for a fact. But what they don't know is how big it is. So it is kind of shocking for Ferdinand and Isabella when Columbus appears before them in their castle in Segovia, the Alcazar, beautiful building, by the way, and says, I'm going to go to China. And they said, okay, yeah, so what?
Lots of other people have told us that. And he says, yes, but China's that way, right?
Yes, it is. Well, I intend to get there by sailing that way. There was a little jaw droppage at the absolute audacity of that plan. The huge cojones exhibited by Columbus. Because what Ferdinand and Isabella did understand is that Columbus's crew would not be well educated, and many of them might still harbor superstitions about what lay too far out there in the ocean. Some might think sea monsters, others might think that they could sail off the edge of the earth. What none of them understood was that Columbus was about to run into a huge speed bump on his sailing voyage to the east. Because remember, he's sailing west to go east. Columbus is so self-deceived that when he does get to land, he calls the people he sees there Indians, because he sincerely believes that he has reached India. And folks, that's why our Native Americans are called Indians, is because Christopher Columbus was wrong, and he was so wrong it stuck. Okay? All right. Now, Christopher Columbus is not Spanish. If Italy existed, he would be Italian. But Italy doesn't exist, it's just a bunch of city-states, and so he is Genoese. He's from the city-state of Genoa on the west coast of Italy. Okay? He grew up in a seafaring family. He was a good captain and navigator. So good, in fact, that on his first voyage he actually keeps 2 logs. One that he allows the other officers and crew to see, and one that is his own with accurate measurements of distances sailed. He was lying to his men. He was deceiving them and letting them think that they had sailed a different distance each day than they actually had. And it was near on the point of mutiny before they actually heard land ho, called from the crow's nest aboard the ship. Columbus had been promising landfall in just a couple of days for a couple of weeks. Okay. He underestimated the actual size of the globe, the circumference of the globe, and he thought it would be just a short little sail to the west to get to the east. Okay? So sometimes we refer to those Caribbean islands as the East Indies, right? Or the West Indies. That is because Columbus thought that he had reached the Indies, the Moluccas in Indonesia. And so these become known as the West Indies rather than the East Indies. Okay, following on Columbus, in 1597, 5 years after Columbus's first voyage, Vasco da Gama, Portuguese, sails. He's going to follow Diaz's route south along the west coast of Africa, and he's going to get to the Cape of Good Hope, and he's going to keep going. He's going to keep going, hopscotching up the eastern side of Africa until he actually veers off and ends up in a place called Calicut, India. Calicut, India. He trades and heads home, and he gets his glory and his gold, baby. He prospers so much that he turns around and does it again. But the second time, he's really smart. He takes along merchants and leaves them there in India to set up trading posts. Here's why. On that first voyage, Columbus pulls into the parking space at the port, and he says, "Hey kids," to his crew, "you guys wait here, I'm going to crack the window, I got to run in and pick up a few things, I'll be right back." He doesn't speak the language. He's brought goods to trade, but he's not sure they're going to be interested in them in India. Okay? And so he has to go from merchant to merchant to merchant trying to work out trades. And that wait here on the ship, crew, I'll be back in just a little bit, turns into days and weeks before he gets enough trades made to fill up the cargo hold of the ship to sail home. What is the crew up to in this time? Are they sitting on the ship playing cat's cradle and hopscotch and stuff? Now, this is a crew full of men who have been isolated at sea for months. They are sick of the sight and the smell of one another, and they are missing companionship. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so they go ashore and they get themselves drunk and they seek out companionship. And they cause general chaos in the port. This is a bunch of white foreigners running around the Indian town of Calicut. This does not make it easy for Da Gama to execute the remainder of the trades. His men aren't always the best ambassadors. Okay? So, by bringing those merchants back on the second time, it's going to take him a while to fill up this ship this time. But next time, it's going to be like driving through McDonald's, baby. Pull up to the port, you and you, unload your warehouse into the ship. Let's go. Done. Portugal is the first European nation to establish a global trading empire, and they do it on Da Gama's model. They do it on Da Gama's model. Trading empire. Yes. Second time. He didn't take any along to leave the first time. He left missionaries. He did his God part. This is huge. Portugal does it first. But Portugal is going to fade into history for us after this. We're going to talk about them one more time when Brazil becomes independent. But after this section, Portugal's not going to matter to us. Because what they did was they had to trade and they had to find natural resources. Spain, in the colonies that they gets just literally mountains of gold and silver. And they have instant wealth. Whereas the Portuguese had to work for theirs. And Spain's colonial empire will be far larger than Portugal's. Because Portugal, because of what we'll talk about tomorrow, Portugal ends up with Africa. Whereas Spain ends up with the New World. And that vastly alters the outcome of the future for those two nations. But it won't be long before I'm saying to you, and from this point forward, Spain doesn't matter anymore either. That is all for today.